Not too good.
I'm going to call the meeting to order. Rebecca, please call the roll.
Toohill.
Here.
Flournoy.
Here.
Anderson.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Gandy.
Yes.
Ham.
Here.
Great. Council, do you have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I will let you know we are striking the May and June finance report because those are not quite ready yet. And so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Approval of the minutes of the October 9th, 2023 council meeting. Approval of the October 13th, 2023 payroll in the amount of $141,664.77. Acceptance of the Volunteer Center Committee minutes. Acceptance of the Environmental and Franchise Utilities Committee minutes. Acceptance of the Library Board minutes. Approval of ACH payment to the Department of Revenue in the amount of $13,556.68. Approval of total claims in the amount of $1,462,456.78. We had 5 claims above $75,000. Boomerang Corporation, $345,453.85 for step 3. Iowa Civil Contracting, $181,598.60 for the airport. Shive Hattery, $155,481.74 for Highway 1. Wicks Construction, $167,762.18 again for Highway 1, and Woodruff Construction for $265,525 for step 3.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Moved by Anderson.
Second.
Second by Gandy. Any discussion?
I have reviewed all the claims and I recommend approval.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Anderson.
Yes.
Gandy.
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Under public forum and appearances, excuse me, we are going to I'm going to change this a little bit, let Ron Blair go first tonight. And so, Ron, why don't you go ahead? This has to do with right-of-way parking request near the trail. So, Ron, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Here tonight to ask for your support for a small trail parking lot and increase trail safety. Not asking for financial support, just the other kind. Does everyone have this map?
It is attached to their agenda here.
Okay, great. And can you all sort of spot yourself in terms of where this is in the city? We've got 8th Street, which runs along by the county yard, and then Gear Avenue over by the golf driving range in Connolly. See that intersection right there? We're all on that one. Okay. So the idea here, you can see the existing trail, and then Kent Rice designed this new alignment. And the idea is that that this alignment would both allow for 4 or 5 very identifiable parking spaces and also take the trail users away from being right sort of on the front lines of that corner there at 8th and Gear, move them back so they're not sort of in a line of fire. There'll be no cost for this parking area. It is covered by Wellmark grant and funds from the Jefferson County Trails Council. So, questions you might have?
So you already own the land?
I'm sorry?
You own the land already?
The city owns the land, yes.
Yeah, this is the right-of-way. And there were discussions with Melanie. Melanie, do you want to add anything? You reviewed it and you're okay. I think one of the reasons we wanted to bring it to City Council is, you know, we do have an ordinance that discourages parking on right-of-way. However, it's not been published, but we want you to be aware of this and get your blessing for it.
Ron, are you guys going to gravel it or anything?
Oh, yeah, gravel.
Gravel?
Yeah. Gravel and also, Katie, those concrete car wheel stops, you know, they would be identified at each of those places so people knew just where to pull in.
Ultimately, I think my understanding, based on what you said, what you've communicated, is this does make it more safe.
I'm sorry?
It does make it more safe, actually, for
absolutely. Yeah,
bikers
yeah, yeah. 'Cause-
and people on the trail.
Yeah.
And parking there on that
Yeah,
corner.
if you see sort of coming east-west, people coming from, heading west, they're sort of blocked by the fencing from the county yard, so they basically can sort of shoot out there onto Gear Avenue, so, and this would make them not do that. It would make it definitely more safe. So, yeah.
And there's no curb there, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the street curves, but you can.
No, curb. Cement curb.
Oh, there isn't.
No.
There is not.
No, there's no curb
there.
on that street.
No,
That's what I thought. I
yeah.
just,
That's why it's a
making
little
sure.
more sort of out in the open, yeah.
I know where this is at, and I know what you're doing with the drawing. How does is the driving range north then of the trail?
The driving range.
Could you
here's
use
the
that,
en- Here's the entryway
Ron,
right into
Ron,
that parking lot.
Ron?
Yep.
could you
So-
use that
Oh, yeah, there we go.
image up there and walk over there?
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
point to what
Okay,
you're
thank
talking
you,
about?
thank you.
I'm having a hard time reading your drawing.
You might take the
Take the mic
microphone with you.
Take the
Hey,
mic
Ron,
with you.
Ron, take the mic with you. Sorry.
Ron.
We try to keep our sound guy happy.
Okay, so Tom, the driveway that goes into the driving range is right here. Does that make sense to you?
And then the parking is to the west on the driving range, right? On the driving range, you pull in and you park to the west.
Yes, that's
So-
right, over in here.
And the loop trail goes where then?
Loop trail goes currently, it goes from up here, it goes down here, and then it goes this way. Okay, that's
Okay.
how it goes currently.
So that's part of Gear then. That's off the side of Gear.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
what.
So it'll just hook up to that
Parallel
same
to
point.
Yeah,
Okay.
it just, I'm saying the car's coming down here, and then here's your trail, people with no curbs, so this puts them back there.
It'll hook up to the current trail east of the driving
Exactly.
range. Got it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep, okay.
Okay, everybody clear about that? Okay.
Motion to approve parking as displayed on the drawings presented.
Moved by Anderson. Is there a second? Second by Rasmussen. Any further discussion? Not, go ahead and call the roll.
Anderson?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Gandy?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Flournoy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Ron,
Thanks,
and
Ron.
to Kent for
Thank you.
another little plus for our trail system.
And I think you know, and I think Doug knows, but when Brittany came here, Brittany Tiller, and to get permission to put in that REAP grant, that REAP grant was awarded to the city of Fairfield. So
Okay.
that's a conservation, something different than trails, but.
Was that for the kayak
Excuse me,
launches?
which grant are you talking about? Reef
This is
grant?
the REAP,
REAP.
City Open Spaces
So then you
grant.
tell us what it was for.
Okay, $71,000, $54,000 is for habitat improvement, removing invasives on the west side of Pleasant Lake,
Oh, okay. I
west
remember
side of
this.
Pleasant Lake,
Yeah.
including that 7.7 acre timber stand that's a little bit to the north of the sort of the general area that most people are aware of. It's a little landlocked, actually. And then 10,000 for improving the dock area, a new expanded dock with a canoe and kayak kind of put in, and then $6,000 with very high quality signage that will be placed around these improved habitat areas.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Congrats.
Brittany
Great.
did fantastic work on it.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much for that little update. Okay, next up is Matt Welcher. Are you here?
I
Yep.
am.
And he's going to talk about the Power Wagon Rally for next year already.
Good evening. I wanted to ask a couple things. You know, I sent in the request in reference to possibly using Chautauqua Park like we used last year, and that happened. Just things got messed up, and we were moved off the square to Chautauqua Park, and it worked okay, and the people really liked it. But for the sake of the community, you know, I've thought about it a lot. It's really hard for the people to see it, you know. So As an alternative, if we can't use the square again, you know, Chautauqua Park was amazing, and it is a great park. But the preference would be if we could use the square like we had in the past. And I know that got confused last year, and I didn't know what I needed to do to see what we needed to make that happen again for this year.
Let's,
I don't remember them being booted off the square last year, so.
I don't
It
even,
Why
was
did
a
that happen?
double booking.
Can you tell us why?
she
Is
said
it
was
double booking?
Double booked.
Oh, double book.
oh, golly, I didn't remember
Well,
that.
we didn't double book. That's why you're in Chautauqua Park.
Well, we were double booked on the square, so then they came up with the alternative, and we were moved to Chautauqua Park. So I just wanted to see, I wanted to get a jump on it way early this year
Yeah.
to see what I needed to do for either place to do what I needed to do to make it work out.
Well, we don't book more than 6 months in advance. Just
So,
kidding. Who was on the square last
yeah, I
year?
was gonna say, who was the double booking? Do you remember?
Tourette's.
Sorry?
Oh, the Tourette's group. Yeah, they had a informational kind of rally situation. So, well, you have a date here, right?
It's
Yep.
Saturday, June 8th.
Yeah.
So I move
so,
we approve
and-
that.
You know,
I mean, if the square was available, the square would be great just for the community, you know?
Yeah.
I
So-
have down Chautauqua Park, but I thought, well, if we're early enough and we can do it there, I would love to block off the square like we have in the past and put it there, because there were so many people last year that we enjoyed it. It was great for us. It was nice and shady, plenty of parking, but nobody knew what was going on.
yeah. Did you
I already,
just do the inside of the?
Yeah, it'd basically
Inside,
just be
so
the
that
two
lanes
inner
were
lanes.
open?
Yeah, yep, and then we'd leave a fire lane. Oh,
Don't
I'm
hit me with
sorry.
your elbow. No, continue.
We'd leave a fire lane around the outside,
Mm-hmm.
and then block off the northeast and the northwest, and then the southwest corner at midnight the night before. That way nobody's on the square.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'd take the two inner lanes and leave a fire lane around the perimeter of it.
Okay.
Is how we'd done it in the past.
So what happened last year is sometimes when people come to appear before council, they haven't filled out a park use permit or a permission to block the square permit. They just come to you and ask for something and they say the same as last year or the same as the year before. And then it doesn't get into our system as a permit. And so that's how we double booked it. So if you would please fill out a park use permit for the square, which would include the how you want the blocking.
Oh, I did that last year.
Well, it didn't get to our department.
Okay.
So if you would do that, that would be great.
I think I filled out the paperwork for this year, and I have copies from last year, but I mean,
Is it
it's
is
neither
it-
here nor there.
Is it attached?
Can we approve it tonight as long as he follows up with the appropriate
Yeah,
paperwork?
yeah, we
absolutely.
can reserve it for him.
Yeah.
I already
Okay.
made a motion to approve
Yeah.
it.
Okay. So motion by Flournoy to approve
Second.
his request, and second by Toohill. Any other discussion?
No.
Okay. All those in favor?
Well, okay, I was gonna say
Go ahead.
Terry Baker wants more
Sure
stuff
got
on the
your
square.
permit.
We should put things on the square as much as possible because if I recall correctly, she wants some upwards of 200 events on the square a year to make it look vibrant and involved and active. There's something going on in this community. So
Yep.
we should encourage that.
Yeah, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, it is passed. Make sure you get your,
Absolutely, I'll bring that up here and
your
turn it in
drawings back to
tomorrow.
Melanie.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Yeah, good luck. Okay. Steve Taylor with the Arbor Committee. Thank you, Steve. And just, I want to say thank you to you and the Arbor Committee. I know you guys have been working really hard and you've just made tremendous progress for the city and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, appreciate that. To give you an idea, this little iPad here is all the little trees that are in the right-of-way that for the last 3 weeks, Bob Costello, myself, and Ray Lane have been touring the city to see what condition the trees are in. This was done about 10 years ago, and so it was in need of an update. I think they had the official update came through in 2015, but actually most of the data that we had in there was from 2013 or strangely 1899 for some reason. But in any event, the bottom line is, and the data hasn't been fully tabulated yet, the state DNR, Emma Hannigan does this, and she's on vacation this week. But I had a discussion with her as to what the bottom line was, and in particular, I said, what about the ash trees? And she said, well, in 2013, you had 376, and now we have about 25. So that was the emerald ash borer in the last 10 years that had basically pretty much decimated most of the trees that were either white ash or green ash. Now, the good news with that is that a lot of people did replant trees in the right-of-way just on their own, it seemed. And also, a lot of the parks have been replanted to some degree. That being said, County also asked me to look into the Alliant grant for, it's a $5,000 grant for trees, and so I've begun to fill out that application. And that would get us about 50 trees, about $100 each, and I'm figuring like about, in addition to the tree, there would also be a wire cage so that the deer and the rabbits wouldn't devour the thing. And we have enough volunteers with the Sierra Club and also other sources connected to the Arbor Committee that we could water the trees once they're planted. Andrew Nash has a tank, a water tank that's on the back of a pickup truck, and so we could drive around for the first 2-3 years that the trees are planted and make sure that they stay alive, and particularly in these last few years. Now, where they would go, this is one such place. This is 23rd Street, and that's out by Kmart. And as you can see, it's wide open spaces there, and we could easily fit about 10 trees there. And there's no utilities. I checked with Melanie Carlson about this to make sure. This is on East Madison, another very open area that we could easily fit about 5 trees. This is Carrington Point. This is one of the few remaining ash trees there. There was about 60 or so trees there. All of them just about succumbed. I think there's maybe about 5 left, and the 5, you know, look kind of like that, where they have a flush of foliage down by the trunk and nothing up above. In other words, that tree's another year and it's gone. Unfortunately, yeah, that's what it looks like now, kind of a moonscape. Unfortunately, there are sewer lines and water lines under there, so we cannot replant exactly where those ash trees were there, but we could probably fit in about 20, and there were 60. And that's just the other view of it. Forest is another place that could, but I believe there's a water line there, so we'll skip that. Bob may want to talk a second about this kind of thing. We did find, of course, there's some silver maples around town that are half dead. And where was it? Okay. Another possible place for more trees would be Cody Circle, kind of stark. And nope, there's utilities under there, Melanie. That's on Madison. So, and this is another dead tree. So there are a few dead trees in town that do need to be addressed. So I guess we'll have to make a presentation to the street department with that. To make sure that some of these things, you know, because that's kind of an accident waiting to happen. Also, probably most of, at least 100 ash trees from Nelson Park disappeared. And most of Nelson Park has been replanted, but there's one ball diamond there that is completely still open, and so that would be another place for maybe another 5 ash trees. Southwood Park also had the same thing happen. That used to be all lined with ash trees, but now it's completely open again. So at least 5, maybe more trees in that area. So I just kind of wanted to let you know where we stand with it, what the state of the trees are around Fairfield, and we're going to be putting in the application before November 1st. I've talked to Melanie with regard to that. We're going to meet on Thursday to kind of you have to submit a little map as to where the trees are going to go, and so she's going to work with me a little bit on that. And that was it. That's just the state of where the things are, if there's any
Is-
questions.
Yes,
Is-
questions?
Is Southwood between Dogwood and the middle school?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So you're putting ash trees back in? Is that what you
No,
said?
no, we're not. That's a good point. They have a list, Alliant, of the trees that they want us to use. And I've selected about 10 out of the list there that are native to our areas, basically hackberry, a thornless, podless honey locust, Kentucky coffee tree, American linden, black oak, bur oak, northern red oak, shingle oak, swamp white oak, and white oak.
And I presume all these trees are on the list that we already approved of?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and they're already on the approved list. I might say that of all the trees around, the ones that seem to be in the best condition anywhere around Fairfield are the oaks. So they really can
So-
take everything we can dish out.
Is the emerald ash borer still alive and well?
It is, however, it doesn't have, as many ash trees that it can feed on, so it's not, basically what I would say is that if you have an ash tree, don't cut it down, give it a chance, because it actually might be one that is resistant. And, that was a mistake that was done with the blight that got the big trees back east there, the chestnut tree, the American chestnut.
What about the elm trees?
They kind of gave that up on that tree, and they cut them all down, and, they weren't able to find a resistant tree. And we do have a few chestnuts actually in, I think, Iowa City and a few places, but for the most part, that tree is now functionally extinct.
Same thing with elm trees.
Elm trees did come back,
Came
because
back,
they,
they'll come back.
they're prolific cedars, and they did find resistant ones, and so now they're okay. And I think the ash will eventually do the same.
I still have one in my yard.
Yeah,
Survived so far.
okay.
Well, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Appreciate it again. Thank you. Is Alex here? I didn't see Alex about the, Melanie's gonna present? Okay, sorry. So Melanie will present about the HVAC capital improvement library.
Well, if you want to just move on to the action item.
Oh. Yeah, because we already did that one. Okay, yeah, we'll just move down to that action item. Consideration to accept quote for library HVAC controls.
Okay. So attached to the agenda is a memo that I wrote regarding the library control bids, as well as an email from Alecs discussing the library board's position, and then the proposals from the three companies. Alex and myself have been working on this for a year or more, and Doug's been involved more recently. And so we call this the third phase of the HVAC upgrades, and this is replacing the master controller for the chiller that we've already replaced, the boiler that we've already replaced, and there's a dehumidifier in there, and then the individual controllers for each of the zones within the library. So this is the hardware for the controls, or for the HVAC system. And we've talked with 3 different companies. We've met with them multiple times. Alex also talked with Calvin at the Rec Center and Fairfield Community School staff on what they use and why they like or don't like the different things that they've used. And ultimately, we are recommending proceeding with a bid or a quote from Johnson Controls for $54,836. Not only was it the lower expense, but it is the one that we prefer to use. And the main reason why it is a lower cost is because we have Johnson Controls now. And so the interface of the chiller and the dehumidifier are all used to talking to, okay, and I am not an IT person, and so Katie's like looking at me kind of funny because this is a non-IT person trying to explain this. So, the chiller and the boiler already know how to talk to a Johnson controller. And so if we would put in a different controller, then we would need additional equipment. So that's why if we would bring in Woodman or Intech, that those costs go up. So that is the first recommendation is to proceed with those quotes. This project was budgeted in the fiscal year that we're in, and did include mechanical engineering drawings because we originally thought that we would be within the threshold, and included replacing some other hardware within the system. We're going to be able to do, for example, there's a light sensor that has been causing Alex problems that he's going to just hire an electrician to do that work. So we're breaking the project up rather than bidding it as one large one, since we are able to get a lower price with Johnson Controls. And the other thing is, though, that we are asking for is signing a 5-year planned service agreement with Johnson Controls, because that we are, this is lower cost than the other two. We are saving money by not having to replace all of the pieces of equipment. That we'd like to sign a 5-year agreement for them to do the maintenance, as well as then recommend, any additional replacements of pieces and parts. And the thing I want to emphasize there is they actually wouldn't be the ones replacing like dampers and damper controls. You would still have a plumber or electrician replacing those. So if Johnson Controls says this sensor is bad, they're not going to be getting extra work for it. Mm-hmm. And so again, I think having the 5-year agreement and them as the controls will be a good path forward for the library. The last thing that I want to mention is this is, outside of this body, this body gives the library a budget, and then they break it down from there. And Alex and I have talked. Alex done a great job identifying maintenance items, and their board's aware of it. But I think we just need to keep talking. The building, many things have reached the end of its useful life. It's just a building that was built in 1996, and things are just worn out. Whether it's the HVAC system or a sensor on a light. And so I think that we need to make sure we keep that in mind as we do the library budget and the board does the library budget, just to keep some extra in library maintenance for those things that are going to come up. Because so with that, if there are any questions, the 2 recommendations are to proceed with Johnson Controls for $54,836, and then to sign the 5-year maintenance agreement.
I'd make a motion to proceed with Johnson Controls.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to proceed with the bid from Johnson Controls plus a 5-year maintenance agreement.
Do we need to do the maintenance agreement separate?
I don't think so.
Okay.
How much is the maintenance?
So any discussion?
I was just curious as what the maintenance agreement, how much is it? Am I missing it?
So it's through around $3,400 a year, and so by signing the 5-year maintenance agreement, we can pay it up front, but then also it locks in the price for the 5 years. So it's like 31 the first year, 31.44, 32.52, 33.72, 34.92, and 36.12. And that's maintenance, as well as then access to the software that controls the system, and doing software updates also in those 5 years, so that we have up-to-date software, because that is another problem with our current system.
So that's like $500 over 5 years increase in the price. That's almost nothing.
That's why we're locking it in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, normally they would ask for 3.5% every year. That's a lot less than that.
That's why we're locking it in. and we did specifically request. We said that, and this is things that I have done with other projects and before I came to work for the city, that we would do maintenance agreements as part of like a wastewater treatment plant or something like that, because it's easier to lock in some of those prices up front.
I just have a curious question. If we had bought one of these other systems, we would still have Johnson Control as our overriding maintenance person?
No, no.
We would be firing them and getting somebody else.
Correct. Yep. And so with Calvin using Johnson Controls, the school is using mainly Johnson Controls. That was another one of the deciding factors that if we, Johnson Controls is in the community for other things, and if we need help, that Josh from the school can, on a small issue, you know, would be able to guide a little bit in it. But also that, again, Johnson Controls is here working on other large buildings already.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, go ahead and call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Okay, the next action item is consideration to authorize easement agreement with ITC. If you remember previously, we had a franchise agreement with ITC. This is an easement agreement.
John, do you want to cover it, or do you want me to start?
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay.
I did send a memo around. I'm fine with what's there, subject to my comments. I
Yep.
think Doug's looked at it too, haven't you?
Okay?
Yeah.
So ITC is the transmission lines for Alliant, so they're the larger lines. If, as you've driven north of town, you know that we have a substation just north of Fairfield, and then we have the large, I'll call them H-style transmission lines that run in the east-west direction from that transformer. And so if you extend that in the east-west direction, it crosses the very northern tip of Pleasant Lake. And it's about 1.8, if what they're requesting is a 200-foot easement. They currently have a 100-foot easement that they believe would have been negotiated in the 60s, but they are offering payment for the full 200 feet width, which comes up to 1.82 acres. Blair had mentioned that we just received the REAP grant for habitat restoration on Pleasant Lake, and so I have talked with Brittany Tiller, and their ITC's project is not going to interfere with that work. In fact, it's going to help it in the sense that Brittany's project is to remove non-native species, and so the fact that ITC is going to be clearing that whole area and returning it to grassland is actually helping us a little bit. I do still need to go visit the site to make sure that there are no large trees that we need to be compensated for, but I'm pretty sure it's all cedar trees. And I've talked with Calvin and Steve, and the departments don't have any issues. We are still allowed to draw water. We can run a water line underneath it. What other questions? I did ask that they have a clause in there that they do not spray for maintenance underneath the lines, so that it's not impacting the lake if we should ever have to use it for a water source again. Other questions?
You said we're being compensated?
Yes.
What's that amount?
$16,900.
Okay.
And Calvin would like to put that money towards the waterworks bathrooms when we move forward on those.
This is a permanent easement.
It is a permanent easement, yep. And so it's a 200-foot permanent easement. On the easement sketch, it has a 20-foot, 25-foot, they call it ancillary easement. And what I remember from the conversation with the land agent is the 200 feet is required by federal law due to the voltage of the line that they're going to be putting up. But however, the actual construction is not going to take that whole 200 feet. So it's kind of like a reverse temporary easement. Okay, they're going to be, the construction is going to take a smaller area than what they need for federal guidelines. So that's the difference between the two. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention, any communication lines. So I did ask about whether there are any radio signals or anything like that on the poles. The only communication lines that are allowed to be attached to these poles is a hard wire that connects the substations to each other. So it's not a wireless communication between the substations. So there would not be any radio signals or anything like that coming from the poles.
In their clearing, are they held to the same standards of anyone else as far as habitats that they might disturb,
Yes.
specifically bats?
Yes, so I asked about that, and so the way that their process works, actually very similar to the city, is that they're doing the easement negotiations first, and they're actually purchasing an option. And so their option is a 2-year option, and then that gives them the 2 years to get through the environmental, and then they have to go through the Iowa Utilities Board to get their final route approved. And so each year of the option, we get 10% of the 16,000. And so if the project doesn't go through after 2 years, because the Iowa Utilities Board decides no, we would get 20% of the 16,000, and that would be it. If the project does proceed after that, the 2 years options have been exercised, then we get the remainder 80% when the final easement is exercised.
So they will go through environmental.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So when will they start if they get approval?
I'm assuming because they did a 2-year option that we're probably talking a 1 to 2 year construction period. I know, like, I live near Lockridge, and people over there received letters, so this is a very large or lengthy transmission line that they're upgrading. The other thing, the purpose of this is they are increasing the wattage of the line, which is the purpose for this easement, and they're also changing from the H-style poles to a single laminated pole. And then I also it doesn't have anything to do with this easement, but I did discuss with the land agent the regulations around our airport and everything that we have to do with there. And then we looked at our airport flight plan, and a couple of their poles are already on our airport flight plan. So anything within 5,000 feet of the airport that is over 75 feet tall gets registered with the FAA. And so anything new that they put in is also going to have to go through that process. And so I had, because they were here, had a great conversation with them about that as well.
So they have to get all the other parts of this settled before they can begin, right?
Right.
Down in Lock Ridge and everybody
Yep.
else that's involved. So it could fall through at some point.
It could.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion to approve easement with ITC.
Okay, moved by Anderson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Gandy. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Anderson?
Yes.
Gandy?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Flournoy?
Yes.
Next action item is consideration of authorization of investment accounts. Doug, you want to talk about this?
So our CDs that were invested, we had over $4 million, and they came due. So I sent out letters to all of the banking institutions in town, and got all of their contact information. Being new to unfamiliar with this process here, I updated some of the process, but I'm gonna do some more next year. Put everything in a file, had everything in it consistent, and gave them a due date. Everyone submitted except for 2 banks, 2 institutions, and Community First Credit Union came back in at the highest, and everything seemed to be the way it should be. So I recommend that we take the credit union if that's at the council advisement.
So do we need to do the resolution naming the depositories first? Does that make a difference?
No, they're not listed already as a depository?
Pardon me?
They're not listed already as a depository?
Well, I think it's the amounts that's different. Because that's our next action item, or
Right.
next resolution.
They're not on our current list.
They're not on the current list.
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought we had to okay the list.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do.
For the year.
Yeah, we
Well,
did
we're just-
earlier this year, and now we want to change it.
We're updating it to add community
Right.
first, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I guess maybe it doesn't. Do you think it makes a difference?
No, just because we
Okay.
haven't transferred any money yet.
Yeah, okay, so let's just go ahead and do that action item.
So I would have moved that we accept the offer from Community First Credit Union at 5.75% for our 4.269 million dollar CD.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Gandy. Further questions? No, please call the roll.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, great, that passed. So next action item then is the resolution naming the depositories, and you see the amounts there. So we have Midwest One at 20 million, Iowa State Bank 10 million, I-Pate 5 million, Two Rivers 500,000, Washington State Bank 10 million, and Community First Credit Union at 7 million.
I would have moved that we approve the list of depositories.
Okay, moved by
Second.
Flournoy, second by Anderson. Further discussion?
Those just to be clear, those numbers you quoted are maximum balance allowed, not
Correct.
what we have in those banks.
Correct.
So, yes.
Yes. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please call roll.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Okay, next resolution, consideration to authorize handicap parking space on 100 block of South Court Street.
With the wonderful increase of traffic to the Carnegie Museum, and the businesses along, or a business along Court Street has requested an additional handicap parking space on Court Street. And with the visitors to Carnegie, I think it will definitely be used. So we are requesting the ability for the Streets Department to put a handicap parking space just on the north side of the alley on the west side of Court Street near Carnegie.
Okay? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Ham,
Second.
second by Toohill. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ham,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 1232, consideration of property maintenance code extension. I'm gonna open the public, well, Paul, why don't you kind of explain what happened at property committee, and then I'll open the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. So the property committee met this evening. Yeah, we had a thorough discussion. We had a number of members of our community present, as well as a number of city staff and elected officials. 13 total in attendance. This has been a matter, property code has been, or updating our property code has been an issue. And then checking that goes back to last year, November of last year, when it's been a matter of of discussion and review by our property committee and by the council, going back and forth between the council and the property committee, well, now for 10 months. We think and we're now to the third reading of a portion of that revision. I'm going to ask our city attorney to explain that in a little more detail in a moment. But what we did tonight was, at the property committee meeting, we had two items on the agenda. One was to review the proposed property code extension, and the other was the community garden lease proposal. Well, the first agenda item took up the hour we had allotted for the meeting, so that's the one thing we spoke about. And we did come to the conclusion at the end, the property committee members who were present, myself and Martha Rasmussen, we did come to the agreement, had a motion, and it would pass between the two of us to recommend to the council that we approve the third reading. Now, if you'll look at the agenda, you'll notice there's two items that are linked. And when it says consideration of property maintenance code extension, there is the Chapter 17.10 Redlined version, which is a link to a document. Next to it, it reads third and final reading. And then there's underneath it something called additional language. So what we're asking of the council this evening, or recommending to the council, is that we approve the third reading of the Chapter 17.10 Redlined version and modification. So that sounds a little bit, what are we talking about? And so what I'd like to do is have our city attorney speak to what we're asking of the council, and I'll explain a bit more once John says a few words, if you would,
Sure.
John.
Thanks, Paul. The ordinance itself is as it's been presented the last two readings, and immediately following it is something called Constitutional Due Process Recommendations, and it's from a Minnesota Supreme Court case. We spent some time after last meeting talking about that case and how it's a spin-off part of the research associated with a lawsuit out at Orange City, Iowa, that relates to a similar ordinance issue having to do with inspecting and administrative search warrants that arise when inspections become contested. And my recommendation was that the committee look at what's going on out at Orange City and some of the cases that give guidance as far as whether you need to have probable cause to do an administrative search warrant. There's at least 3 cases that seem to indicate that you should. Plus, Orange City was stopped in enforcement under their ordinance, which is parallel to ours, for not having some guidance within the ordinance about standards, both related to the process and to the reasons where there might be probable cause to do an administrative search. So essentially, it's a sort of a checks and balance on situation where you might have, in a given situation, a heavy-handed or overly zealous enforcement of inspections or things that come up under the maintenance code or other building codes, other codes that provide for inspection or for administrative search. So the process right now, as far as adoption of the property maintenance code, is that it has been aired through 3 meetings of the committee, as well as it's before us to consider before council at the 3rd reading. And I think what Paul is saying to you is that there have been significant inputs, and they've been considered by the committee. The other thing, though, in adopting this on the recommendation of the committee at this time, it is with an intent that the committee also add some language with an amendment to this ordinance that would basically make the standards under the additional page behind this ordinance into an ordinance which would come on for up to 3 readings, just about the constitutional standards guidance behind this bigger ordinance. That intent to do that doesn't presume that the council will automatically adopt it because I recommend it or because the committee recommends it, but that is their intent, that if you adopt this, there will be something coming that suggests these constitutional standards become part of this ordinance going forward, probably inserted in the ordinance immediately after the inspection language, and also with language that indicates that this will apply not only to the ordinance as it's set forth here, but also to your rental housing ordinance with a reference to Chapter 17 in the amended version that will come forward next. And then it's up to the council, if you do adopt that amendment when it's part of our agenda, whether you want to go through 3 more readings and 3 more hearings on that amendment, or if you want to waive a reading or 2 and just pass it and make it part of the ordinance that you're going to be publishing if you adopt the present property maintenance code through its 3rd reading. Did I say that right, Paul?
You said it well. I understand it. Thank you. So the property code extension, maintenance code extension, they were recommending to the council that it approve at this third and final reading is something we've discussed and council has had an opportunity to review over several months. John is saying there's an additional part they were going to suggest, and I think we, at some point, we're probably going to recommend to the council that it approve, which adds the protections that were made useful because of this case in Orange City, I believe it was.
Yes.
But the property code, maintenance code extension that we recommend to the council approve this evening is something we've been discussing for some time. So I'm going to make a motion.
Before you do
Yeah.
that, if you don't mind, let's open the public hearing.
Okay.
And then you can make your motion
All right.
after I close it. So with that, I'm going to open the public hearing and see if you want to speak, please come to the mic. If you'll let us know what your name is and what ward you live in, I'd appreciate it.
Allison Stimson. Good question on the ward. I don't remember at the moment, I'm sorry. I'm not super informed on the topic, but I just wanted to ask briefly, like, in the case of rental properties, would it be considered a form of probable cause if a tenant had issues with the state of a building and brought that to the attention of the powers that be? Or would this form of this ordinance be protecting landlords from the ability of tenants to raise considerations about a building needing to be inspected?
Okay, thank you. Weston, you want to come up and just address that question since you're the code enforcement officer? I'd appreciate that.
John, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, but, and if I had misunderstood the question, this would not affect the way that we do our inspections now. We currently use the property maintenance code to perform inspections already. This is just another tool and another set of guidelines that outlines what is considered safe and what is necessary in a rental property and in a private home.
So Weston, if you did a rental inspection on a rental like 2 years ago, so you're in the middle of this 4-year process and a renter brought you an issue with that particular property, what's your next step?
It would actually give us a little bit more ability to do an inspection, because right now, basically, if we don't have a complaint, we don't have a reason to go back in to inspect something. This would just get, right now, if we get a complaint, we obviously have a conversation, figure out what is going on actually at the property. We'll ask the tenant if they want to give us access to do an inspection. If they're willing to do that, then we'll go in, we'll do an inspection if we feel it's warranted, and then notify the landowner or the property owner usually that we are going to do an inspection on request of the tenant.
Okay.
And then we would do that inspection anyways. So it wouldn't change anything at this point.
Yeah.
Adding the property maintenance code
Thank
or
you.
updating it as far as the rental
Yeah.
side goes.
Okay, great, thank you. Did that answer your question? Okay. Anybody else want to speak? Go ahead.
Keith Vladimir. I have a couple of comments or questions. One was about revision of section 605.2, and I have no idea where that is in the code, just not on the slide. But it talks about the ground vault receptacles, replaced, the wall ones, and so many to be placed. But it doesn't talk about the, unless I missed it someplace, about the ground vaults that are set in the electrical panels for the house. The whole electrical in the house, there was one ground fault, and it's set in
You mean
the
on the
electrical
panel?
panel, yeah.
not the individual ones in the bathrooms
No.
or the kitchen.
No.
Weston, are you going to speak to that?
I think I can answer.
Okay, great, thank you.
Are you talking about in the rentals or in a private?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, so the way that the code is written is when there was a modification on the private side, when there's a modification or a major hazard, that we would identify that it would be brought up to current code. So if a house is built without the breakers, the ground fault breakers
In the panel?
in the panel, and it was code at that time, that would be acceptable
At the time of construction.
at the time of construction, okay? Or a major modification, that would be a reason to upgrade those things. So on our rental side, we don't require it in the breaker panels at this time. We just require it at the
Individual outlet.
individual outlets
Yeah.
for the rentals.
But what if the owner, landlord, puts the one in the electrical panel for the whole house? It's not, and this says it's gotta have one at certain outlets.
I think that would be fine. It's like having one GFI on a
Right.
whole circuit. As long as you have a GFI that is on a circuit in a wet area on a rental. Like a laundry room, the kitchen, and the bathroom should all be on a GFI circuit. It doesn't have to be necessarily the one directly in front of the sink, but it does have to be on a circuit.
Yeah,
So a one in the panel would work.
okay, instead of those individual ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? So when you have that method, and you have one on the panel but not at the outlet itself, does it look like a normal outlet, or can you tell that it's a GF?
It looks like a normal outlet. You'd have to test it. You'd have to use a tester to test it.
So how does a prospective tenant know that they have a grounded outlet in their bathroom, for example?
They would probably,
Ask.
Buttons on it.
some, the ones that are in there now probably have the buttons on them.
Yeah.
And I would highly suggest that the landlords stick with that, because that makes a lot of people feel safer in them. But I think according to code that at least the ones in the breaker box, which I presume that they would have to show them the breaker box, you know, they would want to show them where the breaker is at and the GFI in the breaker box at that point.
tool that tests, they have a tool that tests it.
But the average person won't answer the question. So, yeah, we have a tool that just plugs in, that tests it and tells us whether it's a GFI.
Okay.
So you know to ask when you don't see one, but the tenant,
No,
not.
and that's,
Okay.
Okay. Did you have another question, Keith?
Couple of questions.
You might want to stay up there, Weston, just in case.
No, it's not. I was looking through this and trying to read the changes in the ordinance, but I didn't know where section 600 or 300 was. It wasn't online. So that's just my comment. I don't think the code, or the ordinance online must not be up to date.
The ordinance is the property maintenance code is not attached to it.
Do you want us to get you copies of those?
Well, I just thought it'd be online, I guess, or it says it's up to date. I guess I'm confused, so I don't.
You want to repeat that, Rebecca?
I was just saying that the ordinance is up to date, but we did not have the property maintenance code
On there?
on the
Attached.
on the website.
Okay.
Excuse me.
And something that came up, what is an administrative search warrant?
What is an administrative
Yeah, I
search
never
warrant?
heard of that one, so.
It's a warrant that if you have an issue with something that all towns have called a right of entry, the right of entry can be interpreted a number of different ways as far as a tribunal. Sometimes it's an administrative body at the state level, sometimes it's a court, might be district court or magistrate court, but it's different than a criminal search warrant where you always have to have, under the Fourth Amendment, probable cause to go searching for evidence of crime. Administrative search warrant has to do with things that are less than crimes, but that are regulated And hence you have administrative, for instance, I'll give you some examples. Most towns' utility ordinances have a right of entry to go in an emergency and find where the water leak is, or shut off the problems that are causing a merging of sanitary sewage with regular stormwater drainage, and that sort of thing. If they have that right of entry and they're refused entry, they can treat it as an emergency and immediately go to a magistrate and ask for something that authorizes the entry to follow up on that particular utility problem. You know, that's one kind of administrative procedure to get a warrant if you need it. If you're in the housing inspection situation and someone refuses you entry and you are operating on a belief, maybe there's fire hazard, maybe there's infestation, maybe there's something the Board of Health called your attention to, maybe it's a complaint that has to do with public safety or security. Whatever the reason, you give that as an explanation, and the magistrate issues you something that gives you right of entry. But it works that way on the civil side. It doesn't rise to the same standard that you have on a probable cause for criminal conduct. You have to give an indication to the court in a criminal search warrant that you believe a crime has been committed and you're looking for the right to search for proof of that crime. Administrative search warrants have to do with assisting in dealing with an administrative regulatory problem instead. Does that help?
Yeah, so you talked about going to a magistrate. Can it be a panel set up within a city or a council or a county that?
It hasn't been in our history. We hardly ever go after an administrative search warrant. We've had a few times in the last 30-some years that I've been city attorney when we've asked for one. Usually if we had something come in front of the magistrate, the owner was being confronted and it came up in a landlord-tenant dispute or something like that, and the city was pulled into it by one party or another, and usually it was consented to before the magistrate had to spell out what we could go search for or enter and inspect. I have had in the last 6 months, I've had an administrative search warrant granted down in Van Buren County in another town because someone was refusing access to a place that was infested badly. So every once in a while it comes up. The Board of Health can ask for one. That's another situation. If you've got maybe a problem with a breakdown in the way plumbing in a particular neighborhood is working, you may have to go house to house to figure out whose little kid's snowsuit is plugging up maybe a sewer pipe or something like that. You don't want to have to do that. It's intrusive. You knock on the doors and tell people they're having a problem. Most of the time people are going to come out and say, oh, I don't want it backing up in my house, so please come in. But the other side of it is if somebody says, no, you're not inspecting my house, that might be the house that we have to inspect. So it's also a discretionary call by the magistrate judge as far as whether there is reasonable cause versus the higher standard you have in a criminal case as far as the higher degree of probable cause related to crime. But reasonable cause in an administrative search warrant situation is what our next amendment to this ordinance is going to deal with, and that, you know, basically will spell out a half a dozen different standards that if Weston needed a warrant, he would have to present and satisfy the court about. And it is something, I know that there are administrative, for instance, I think the Iowa Utility Board has the power to do certain things as far as looking into things if there's particularly bad accident or something under their regulation, but for the most part, you usually only see it coming up in front of magistrates or district court judges.
Great, thank you.
So the magistrate is the one that issues this type of warrant?
Yes.
Okay.
And Keith,
Yes.
Weston has copies of the property maintenance code, and he can tell you where to find it out
Oh,
on the
okay,
internet,
thank you.
correct? So, if anybody has questions about that, because our ordinance refers to that, so. Okay, anybody else want to speak? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and come back to Paul for his motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that the property code extension is, if I may say a few words, is well considered, and I'm grateful for the time our city staff, particularly our city attorney, our city code compliance officer, and our city public works director and city engineer put into preparing this property code extension. I think it's also been made better by the input of our community members who appeared at our property committee meetings and also at the council meetings to discuss and comment upon the proposed code extension. I'm thankful for them. I also think we're at the time where this property code extension, I think it's ready to be approved by the city council. And so I make a motion that the city approve the third and final reading of, as you see in the agenda, Chapter 7.10, Redlined version, and modifications to Chapter 9. That's part of the code extension that we're going to be asking for approval this evening. So I make that motion.
Second.
Okay, there's a move by Gandy and a second by Rasmussen. Further discussion?
Just to be clear, you're asking for approval of the redlined version and the additional language?
No, not just asking for approval of the redlined version, just the
the
redlined
The
version.
additional language will come next
Right.
meeting.
Well,
Right.
It's also on the agenda right there, but you're not asking for that tonight.
That's correct.
Right.
So you mentioned Chapter 9, modification to Chapter 9, that's in the redlined version.
That's
All
right. That's right.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion, questions? Please call the roll.
Gandy,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes,
Toohill,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Okay, that has been approved, and the additional language will come to you as an ordinance next meeting. Okay, under the mayor's report, I do have a proclamation. Last week, the manufacturers luncheon, which is an annual event, was completed. Nice luncheon and very well attended, standing room only practically. And so I am going to read the manufacturer's proclamation. Whereas the manufacturers of industrial goods and services in the city of Fairfield have played a major role in creating a solid foundation of commerce in the city of Fairfield for over 100 years, and whereas the men and women employed within the manufacturing workforce constitute a substantial impact on the economy and growth of this community, and the state of Iowa has more than 3,000 manufacturing companies and accounts for more than $38 billion in Iowa's GDP, and whereas Iowa manufacturing firms supply more than 225,000 jobs with an annual compensation of $80,000 to Iowans, representing more than 14% of the state's total employment, and whereas the products and services from these firms are exported throughout the international marketplace, and these operations continue to establish an even broader base of products distribution, and whereas the citizens of Fairfield, Iowa are proud of the work ethic within this community and wish to so recognize it, and whereas the retention of growth of our manufacturing sector is a major part of our overall community economic strategy, now therefore be it resolved, I, Connie Boyer, Mayor of the City of Fairfield, Iowa, proclaim that the month of October as Fairfield Manufacturers Month and salute the members of the Fairfield Manufacturers Association for the dedication to our community to provide the jobs necessary to sustain our economy and further contributions to the quality of life of our city. When I was researching this, well, first of all, congratulations to all our manufacturers, and we do salute you for all the things that you do for our community, not only employing our citizens, but all the contributions. When I was updating my numbers here, because we usually do this every year, I came across an interesting statistic, which was that 52% of people who get out of the manufacturing sector have done so because of a child care issue. And so I think Fairfield has, certainly recognized that over the last few years, and manufacturers, no doubt, were really engaged in our new child care center, and we appreciate that. They recognize that it's an issue, and so hopefully that really helps our community over time, and thank them for the investment that they did on our community child care center, as well as many of the other things they put their money towards. So again, thank you. I do have two board appointments that were added, late today, but I just got the approval from the Beautification Commission that they in fact wanted these two that were sent. Emily Scopin, she is a homeowner and artist and gardener, and she was recommended by one of the current beautification members, as well as Mercedes Mencia, currently works at Cambridge Investment Research, and she again was starting to volunteer with the Fairfield Beautification Commission, and looks forward to helping them with design projects, posters, brochures, PowerPoints, some social media, so she should help some marketing of that. They would be replacing Caitlin Daly and Tom Hervanek. I don't know how to say that last name. Anybody know? Anyway, I don't know Tom, so they are no longer on the board, so I would appreciate you approving those two people.
So moved?
Second.
Moved by Gandy, second by Anderson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. I wanted to mention that last Monday we did a town hall here at the City Hall about the Capital Improvements Reserve Fund, and remind the community that this is on your ballot, and open early voting is available now at the courthouse. This is a renewal of the 60 cents levy that we've had in place since, definitely for the last 10 years. I think it went farther back than that, right, Melanie? Yeah. So this goes to capital improvements, just what it says. So we hope that the community supports it. You can go see that on Fairfield Media's YouTube. So I encourage you. It lasts about a half hour, no more than 35 minutes. How much long was it? 30. It was 30 minutes. Okay, yeah. So it's not that long. Very informative. Melanie and Doug did a really good job of explaining what it is and what it does. So we hope you go out there. Again, it's under Fairfield Media's YouTube channel.
So, I'm sorry, Mayor, you said early voting is available now at the courthouse?
Yes,
Okay.
it is. Last thing, we did a ribbon cutting last week at Lamson Woods for the new playground. Beautiful playground given by the Dowd family through their business, Cotto Avocado Ice Cream. And also, big thank you to them, but also want to thank the Elks, because they planted a whole bunch of new trees right along that new playground. It looks really beautiful. And apparently in the spring there'll be a few more things, some benches, and I think a picnic table next spring. That's also coming. So great new park. Thank you for those people who involved in that. And that was a 3-year planning project with the family and friends and Park and Rec and different people who were involved in that. It was quite a crew. Okay, so that is all I have for that. City Attorney report.
Just a couple things. I want to mention, and I want to thank you, Mayor, for showing up for an event we had over at the Arts and Convention Center on Friday. For the council's information, we had about 130 people in attendance at an every 2-year bench bar conference that Fairfield's become known for. About probably a third of that group was court personnel, partly administrators, and mostly judges. We had 2 judges from the Iowa Supreme Court here, including Susan Christensen, the Chief Justice of the Iowa Supreme Court. This is her second trip down here. And her last trip down, she played pool in a challenge contest over at Mad Hatter's after the event, and helped raise $111 for a Legal Aid Society fund at that time. This time, when she was down, we didn't realize it, but she's also a rock and roll star, and she played the keyboard along with our chief judge for our judicial district, Byron Gukin, on the drums for a group that they coined Susie and the Misfits. And they had a lot of fun with that. They played during a couple of our breaks and immediately after the event. The mayor showed up and gave a welcoming over the noon hour to the group. And the group came down to Mad Hatter's afterwards for social hors d'oeuvres and some beverages, and the mayor showed up there also to again greet some people. So I want to thank the mayor for involving in that. She did the last time we had that 2 years ago. And I think it's one of those situations where we earn a lot of goodwill within our area. Some of the people that attended stuck around for dinner in town. Some people went over to the movie at the convention center later that night. A lot of people, they at least take a booklet home about Fairfield. And so it's an event that it's been going on since the 90s. Some of the people that were responsible for starting it have passed away since then. It happens to lawyers. They get older, and same thing with judges. But we have a good foothold on that being our event, I think, for years to come also. Other thing I wanted to mention, we have a new magistrate. Our magistrate for the last 12 years, Steve Small, had to retire because he became 72 years of age, and I thought that was a terrible injustice because he was still sharp as a tack and wanted to continue to serve. And through some, I guess, misinterpretation that went on as far as state-level court administration, there was a way that he possibly could have been exempted and served in senior status all the way to the time he was 78, but that process didn't get invoked in time to do any good with Steve Small. So they had a retirement event for him since we met last, and he is no longer our magistrate. We have a new magistrate now. His name is Phil Parsons. He's from a family that lives up by Richland. His mother worked here in Fairfield for years out at Reef Grain, and he's a nice middle-aged man that I expect we're going to see a lot of. I think Weston and I will see him probably every week. He's changed his magistrate hours so that he's doing trials on Thursday afternoons instead of splitting up his week Tuesday and Thursday. We're going to get used to that. We had a trial in front of him last week for the first time with one of our sovereign citizens, and we got all our exhibits in. Weston testified, and probably we'll get a ruling in the next day or two. I'm not real confident in this situation because there was quite a bit of confusion about what the position of the defendant was, but also the magistrate felt that one of our ordinances better fit the circumstances than the one we charged under, which was failure to have a zoning permit. Now, the way we use our ordinances, we almost always do the zoning permit violation if we have a situation that has anything to do with a circumstance where zoning is a question. And that's what we argued, and Weston put on a piece of testimony about why we use a zoning permit instead of a building permit in that situation. We'll see, though. I expect it's going to be a learning process probably for about a year as far as our nuisance ordinances, also with the new judge. But I expect over time we'll have a working relationship up there that is pretty much understanding of our ordinance. It does take a while. The other thing, I was in a conversation at this conference with a couple other attorneys that are city attorneys in other communities. Everybody's worked up about House File 718. And I know some of our city finance officers and clerk attended a couple days of the League of Cities training on finance, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school that this is going to be a hot topic for at least 2025 or 2024, 2025, and 2026. There are changes under this new statute that are going to make us think about budgeting in a different way than we have ever since the John Brown era of our city administration, when they changed us over as far as the way we do accounting and revised things back in the 80s and 90s. So I expect this is probably something we ought to build into our workshops when we have them a little bit at a time. I'm probably expecting Doug and I will have lunch once in a while about 718 issues. And I don't know what they are yet myself, but I've got a day and a half of school in November right before Thanksgiving where they'll lay that on the tables for the city attorneys. And I expect it's just going to be something that I've already had 2 conversations with Representative Jeff Shipley, and his commentary was, well, there are things about that will probably, they'll be scrutinized again. We'll see how it works as far as getting started, and there may be some amendments. I think there'll be a lot of amendments between now and 2026 because it's turning a lot of our reserve funds and things into something that are merged. It's changed already on the state government side, this makeup of some of the departments and eliminated some, I guess I'd call expectations as far as what certain departments do and so forth. And I think that's going to get passed on to us too down here at the city level. Even though I thought we had city home rule. So we're still going to be told how to do it by the state as far as some of our fiscal and what we had and talked about in prior years for 2 or 3 years about 2% allowable growth and other things in budgeting. That's now being revised so that they are looking at slightly different percentages, but it's after they merge half of our funds and probably put us in a situation where, I don't know, I'm not the person that looks at the city budget with the close eyes that you do, but I expect we're going to have some work sessions before we get into this very far. So,
John, shall we invite the legislators in November for our work session?
that might
this
not
year?
be a bad idea.
To get a high level
Yeah.
overview of
Yeah,
what they know and what has
Yeah.
been discussed and
I'd like to have take
potential
a second
changes.
look at what they did.
okay. Yeah, I think that's
So,
worth
yes, I
talking.
think that's
Maybe
a great
they can join
idea.
us.
That's a great idea. And Doug, you walked right into it. So it'll be educational for all of us, but it's something that's coming and we're going to have to, deal with it.
Great, thank you.
All right.
That it?
That's it.
Okay, committee and board reports. I think we really talked about committee, property committee. Anything else to
No,
add?
nothing else.
Paul?
Thank you.
Okay. Administrative and department reports. Doug, you want to go first?
I can. Last week, we met with the Evergreen Cemetery. The city of Fairfield does have a vested interest in that cemetery because we do own some of that property, and like every cemetery across the nation, that they are doing some fundraising activities to keep those perpetual care funds going. They're wanting to fix roads, level headstones, what have you. It's important that we as a city also keep an eye on that needle, that all of those cemeteries are not going away. We're not moving them. They're always going to be there for generations, and we need to, although that we are not doing the maintenance, that is a reflection on the city, so it's important to have those conversations and how we are doing our part as a city to maintain those cemeteries moving forward. I had another KMCD spotlight. They asked me several questions, and this is going to be a hot topic for now until election, that they're talking about the Capital Infrastructure Reserve Fund, which we're repeatedly having independent conversations. People are asking what it's for, how much it's going to cost. Is this raising the levy? And no, it is not. It's maintaining what we already have. So they also asked about budget season and the reserve funds, the unobligated fund balance. Those are conversations that we're going to look closely at. That, as we invest in our CDs, those are a portion of our reserve funds, but those funds are not something that we actually use. And the conversation that they actually had with me was we should have an unobligated fund balance to help fund those shortfalls so that, the city can maintain its liquidity. However, be able to support as inflation goes up, that we can actually continue to maintain our capital infrastructure and move it forward. So we were having those discussions, and as our work sessions begin, those are the conversations that we'll be having and how we'll be able to approach that situation. Again, the continued brush pile conversations, the gates have gone up. I've had very little murmur. Actually, I've had more thank you for doing that conversations rather than having the how dare you conversations. I do have a little bit of grumbling, but the citizens are still utilizing the brush pile. They're just changing the way that they're doing that. And the majority of the usage is on the weekends, so it's really done what it's supposed to do until we find some resolution to, again, reduce our inventory, and I'm pretty pleased with that so far, and it's reduced some of the headaches with the street department as of right now, but we'll see in the weeks to come. I was invited to come to the manufacturers luncheon, got to see the mayor speak and did a wonderful job, and it's always nice to make those connections. I don't ever get to talk to anyone, especially when you have 200 people in a room, but I enjoyed that time. And then again, the mayor spoke, and she did just as good of a job with the capital improvement fund meeting, and we have just been working our tails off trying to get things done and moving forward. So
Great.
That's all I have for you.
Thank you. Why don't you ask the question after we get done with the meeting here? Yeah, so we can finish up. Yeah, Melanie.
Yeah, and a couple things that I forgot to put on the project update. So first on the surf, in addition to all the other things that people mentioned, I also did an interview with Bob Ferguson over the weekend. So that's something that he'll have up on his personal Facebook page that people can share. I also encourage everyone to check out the city's page tomorrow. It'll be an interesting post about surf. I'm trying to add a little humor to it. You may regret giving the engineer authority over the city's Facebook page because I have a different sense of humor. I'm just going to leave it at that. You're going to have to wait till 6 a.m. for it to get posted. But now everyone who has seen this is going to go check that out. And we got the word out about surf. See? Marketing genius. Anyway. And then also the boat ramp, some discussions on about the surf, some questions that came up. So actually at Waterworks, staff had just completed doing the boat ramp improvements at Waterworks. I haven't been out there to look at it, but they have closed off the old boat ramp that is there and the newer one that is I will say more towards the west side of the building. Oh man. And then, yes, and then the REAP grant, Ron Blair talked about that. As far as things that are on the list, I swear a lot has been going on. A lot of energy has been spent on Highway 1 lately. I believe that they did end up pouring a section of pavement today from the well to Casey's. They're going to be pouring that in halves, in east-west halves. And as they finish that up, do the backfill and the painting, I'm hopeful that we'll see from Buchanan to the roundabout open by Thanksgiving, assuming the weather continues to hold out for them. That still leaves a section between Miller and Fillmore. They are going to be putting in the storm sewer in there and not tearing the pavement completely out. So if we just have to put in patches from that section between Miller to Fillmore and then come back and do the pavement in the spring, we'll be all set up to do that. However, if the weather holds, they can go ahead and do that pavement, that last section. I kind of jokingly told them that if they time it right and the weather's good over Christmas break, we can close Fillmore completely down if it's over Christmas break for the school district. Because that's the main traffic on Fillmore, and their eyes actually kind of lit up a little bit. They're like, oh, that's a good idea. So if the weather holds out, we might be able to coordinate it with some of the school schedules. Also on your council agenda, you paid a bill to Iowa Civil Contracting. That is the contractor for the airport. Things are going well out there. I have not been out there, which means that there has not been an emergency that I needed to go out there for. But they are about a quarter of the way through on that project. And so for projects, that is the only things I really had to update you on, other than continuing to move things forward. I have a couple economic development things that I've been working on that will come through council hopefully at a later time. Then also attached to your agenda is just an FYI. Earlier this month, I sent in our biannual report to the EPA. This is required as our EPA compliance order for the wastewater system. Again, letting you know that I'm doing my job and getting these reports in. So one of the things with our last report is we did request an extension to the completion date of step 3. Having bid it and gotten a full schedule from the contractor at our last report, we requested that. They did approve that shortly before I submitted this one. So moving forward with this, we have a really solid schedule and good relationship with the regional EPA office. The biggest thing I want to point out, yes, it's been a dry year, but even during the isolated heavy rain events, we still have not seen a rain event, a sanitary sewer overflow related to a rain event since step 2 has come online. We've had a couple overflows. They've been related to plugs in the line and pump failures, but we have not had one related to rain events. So again, our projects are doing what they're supposed to do, and that will kind of, that's going to give us some conversations, talk about how we proceed with step 4, maybe doing a much smaller portion of it, and obviously things that we still need to talk about, but we continue to have good news about our sanitary sewer overflows. And even though I have to put an update or a calendar reminder to make sure I do these reports twice a year, it's good to do it twice a year just to make sure that I look at those SSOs and can report to you guys that we're still doing very well in that department. So, any questions on either of those?
Bridge east of town?
So there is quite a long period between when the plans get turned into the DOT and then we bid the project. So we were in that phase right now. So it's in the DOT for review. We're still looking at a December letting. We have our easements. I guess I haven't touched base with John lately on those as far as whether those got finalized with the property owners, but they're signed. They're legal. We just need to record the documents, I believe. And there's a few other minor coordination things with some utilities to do, but it's in DOT's court until December.
But it will not start as long as Highway 1's closed.
we are bidding it in December, and then we will coordinate it when we have a contractor. That's why we are taking Highway 1 one step at a time, and the stage 6 and 7 of Highway 1 are much smaller. That's the goal, that they're not closed at the same time. The bridge for Crow Creek is precast, so even once the contract's awarded, there's a lead time before they start demo. And yes.
Hey, Melanie, do we have any kind of estimated time frame to get the sidewalk inventory back?
When I have time.
Do you have the report from them?
Nope.
That's what I mean. When
no,
are you going to get
they
the
have-
do you
they have it
have
done.
an idea when you're going to get the report?
Yeah, they have it done. They've been trying to schedule a time to meet with me to go over
Oh,
it.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So we'll look forward to hearing about that when you can get to it. Thank you. Any other questions for Melanie? Not, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Toohill,
Second.
second by Ham. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.